Hello again, Michael Ware with Warrior Wednesday. We have John Petrolino here. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to us for those who may not know you?
So I'm John Petrolino. I'm a freelance journalist that covers Second Amendment related issues. I'm from the People's Republic of New Jersey. So I'm here behind enemy lines, working in the belly of the beast. And my work, it's appeared in primarily. I put a lot of my work out at Bearing Arms, Ammo Land, The Truth About Guns. I've been over there a couple times. Shooting News Weekly, News 2A. That's a website that if you guys aren't aware of News 2A, check them out. Huge up and coming publication. They do some tremendous stuff, some great advocates, activists, but also people that are doing quality journalism over there. So I cover our topics in the written form, and I also have I've dove into magazine too. So I've had an article come out in Concealed Carry magazine for USCCA. So I'll be covering stuff for them on an as needed basis. And I also serve on the board of directors for the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, which is the sister organization for Second Amendment Foundation.
Have you noticed that people like you tend to be very, very busy no matter what?
Yes. So, and that's like a multi-layered thing. That's a very onion question because number one, I believe that New Jersey in particular breeds very strong advocate activists. So us living here, being as oppressed as we are in a state that has some of the most draconian gun laws in the country, when you tell the people no so many times, eventually the ones that want to do something about it rise up and they get active and they stay active. And I think that has a lot to do with kind of my genesis story too, was not just growing up around firearms, which I did. I did grow up around firearms for the most part in more of a sporting sense in the hunting and recreational shooting, whether it be recreational shooting in scouts or, hunting with the family and doing, that kind of recreational thing. So I did have that exposure, but it wasn't until I was an adult until I really understood what was going on in the geopolitics of New Jersey. And, that first few times they say no, that stings, right? And I think that energizes you and it creates a potential that eventually turns kinetic. And when it turns kinetic, you get people kind of like me where you take your whatever talents you think you might have and try to exploit them to, move in a forward direction. So for my writing in particular, what is funny is because it's kind of started out as activist, writing. And I did a very large shift where I was going from writing, not that I don't write opinion, because I still write plenty of opinion. And there's nothing wrong with opinion writing. I want to get that out of the way because some of the best writers that are out there write phenomenal opinion work. But I kind of, subscribed over the last couple of years, maybe 2 or so years. This is the best way for me to actually be able to serve the Second Amendment is by providing unbiased reporting on it. So you could almost draw a line and see where my work changes, where it gets, I don't want to say more serious because it's always been serious, but maybe less opinionated and letting the stories tell themselves, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Can we go back to something you touched on earlier? I mentioned, I made the remark that it seemed like you were very busy and people like you are very busy. And you led immediately into, for lack of a better way of explaining it, you had been marginalized and marginalized enough or to the degree that you were willing to push back. I find that story a common thread among many, many, many Second Amendment advocates. In fact, I would tell you, I don't know any movers and shakers, people who are truly dedicated to this cause that don't have a story like that. my own sounds eerily similar to yours. I went in, I don't remember, 5 or maybe 6 years in a row on around my birthday to the local sheriff to get the May issue permit to carry. And I happened to reside in a county that had a sheriff that wasn't much on that kind of thing. He issued them to his buddies, but nobody like me. And I think there was 35,000 people in the county. He had issued like, I don't remember, under 200 permits in his entire time as sheriff. So I went in there and got told no enough times that I said, you know what, this is wrong. This is patently wrong. And so I took steps. Some of them were good steps, some of them weren't. And that was a learning curve for me, not because I made fundamental errors, but because I was a little too brash. And I probably could have done what I did with more respect to the institutions and to the people. And that was a valuable lesson for me. Now, I still have fundamental problems with that, John. It's very hard. I will admit it's very hard for me to respect people that absolutely don't respect me or my rights at all. So it's tough for me to give that in reciprocity when I'm not receiving it. But that's necessary of gentlemen. That's the way this is supposed to work. But I think it's interesting that you would say that. And I don't know a lot about New Jersey, but I know a little bit about some of the folks that live and work out there. I remember not knowing much about New Jersey at all, and then spending, I don't know, several hours with Anthony Calandro. I think it was his first year as an NRA board member when I met out there for some meetings. And I was like, what do you mean it's like this or it's like that? And I didn't, honestly, I felt kind of stupid because I didn't realize things were quite that tough for my brothers and sisters in that state. I mean, I had a pretty good idea what was going on in Illinois, California, New York, those kind of things. But I didn't realize Jersey was the epitome of all things bad for the Second Amendment. And as he explained it, I honestly begin to feel bad about it. I really, not only that I didn't know it, but for the citizens that live and work there with you.
Yeah, and Anthony Calandro, you brought him up. What he's a friend of mine, so full disclosure, he's a pal, but what a tremendous advocate activist for the Second Amendment. And this is a guy that, fought through immeasurable amounts of adversity to get to where he is today. And what a powerhouse of a man. And I can't say enough nice things about Calandro. And if those of you who don't know Anthony and his work, he owns, one of the biggest, best ranges in New Jersey. And it's not far from Manhattan where he's located. And if you want to learn more about him, you could, check him out at Gun for Hire. And he also has a podcast that has a tremendous following. And I think we're talking about the top 1%, maybe the top 0.5% of all podcasts. And that's all podcasts, not just gun podcasts. So he's way up there ranking. So that's the Gun for Hire radio. So I would tune into that. And it's not just Jersey stuff, but there is plenty of Jersey stuff there. For me, though, and, talking about that denial, it wasn't the denial that got me to where I am. So now I came of age in the 1900s when I got my first firearms identification card at the age of 18. And so in New Jersey, naturally, it's not until you're 21 until you'd be exposed to handguns and whatnot. So when I turned 21, I did go down to my police station in Middletown, New Jersey, which is, as a crow flies, only a couple of miles away from where Governor Phil Murphy, our governor right now, is our rights, where he lives on right off of Navesink River Road, I believe. And it's in Middletown, New Jersey. And I trucked myself over there as a fresh 21-year-old. And I walked into the police station and I talked to the gal behind the desk. And I said, hey, I'd like to apply for a permit to carry. And she said, you can't. I says, what do you mean I can't? She goes, yeah, you can't apply for a permit to carry. I said, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, this is my constitutional right. Of course I could apply for a permit to carry. And what she said to me was, not in New Jersey, it's not. And then I was like, well, you know what? Give me the paperwork. I'm taking the paperwork. I know you have paperwork. You can't tell me that I can't apply. Give me the paperwork. So I took the application and I took the light blue fingerprint card and the dark blue fingerprint card, and I gathered it all together and I threw it in the trunk of my Cutlass, my 1983 Cutlass Oldsmobile Supreme. And that's where the paperwork stayed until I got a Ford Taurus. I never did anything with it because I was like, clearly this is going nowhere. But it stuck with me. And that mentality, that oppressive, not in New Jersey, it's not your right, stuck with me. And that's kind of helped morph me into what I am today, you know, and this is many, many, many moons later, you know, and I do have finally a permit to carry in the state of New Jersey. And it's not like I did that, you know, the whole Second Amendment movement did that. But this was something that I was advocating and fighting for, you know, for a good portion of my adult life.
Oh man, what a similar story. I had almost an identical, almost a carbon copy experience when I went to the sheriff. She was a nice lady at the front counter. I mean, I'm not upset with her, but she said straight up, she's like, "You don't need to apply. He won't approve it." And I said, "Yeah, but I want to apply." She's like, "You don't need to. He doesn't issue permits." So I left, and then this, of course, the 5th or 6th year, whatever it was, I said, "I'm filling this paperwork out." She's like, "You don't need to. He won't issue you a permit." I'm like, "You can't deny me the ability to turn this to apply." I said, an illegal alien could walk in here. Somebody that was parachuted in from Russia could walk in here and turn in the application. Now, you don't have to do much with it, but at least they could turn it in. And she said no. So one thing led to another. I got senators involved and whatever else, and they phone called the sheriff, and so he was able to say, "I don't have any denied permits applications on file for microwave." I don't know what he's talking about, which was true, but misleading. And then it got worse from there. But we were able to finally change that. And it is a shall issue state now rather than may issue. We have constitutional carry, all these other things. But it was, I don't know, man. John, I think it's safe to say I was motivated by characterizing this as butthurt. I was really upset. And I just couldn't figure out why. These are fundamental. These are basic human rights. These are civil rights, man. These things are inalienable. And we're going to alienate them. I mean, and we're going to do it with enthusiasm, with zeal. And I'm like, dude, this is wrong. And I need to do what I can do to stop this or change this practice. And so that's how it started for me. And I hear this story from lots and lots of people, John. What you're saying is not foreign to me at all. And I'm glad that you're willing to fight the fight. I'm glad that Anthony is willing to fight the fight and to do these things, because without people who are willing to put gas in the tank and then actually be there where the rubber meets the road, this doesn't work any other way. I can't imagine another way that we could advance and protect the Second Amendment unless we're willing to engage in work.
Oh yeah, and New Jersey is no different. So, like I said, I do believe the advocate activists that we breed are very strong, ferocious fighters.
Yeah.
But when you look at the numbers, you only have a small margin of people that are willing to really get their hands dirty. And it doesn't even have to be just get your hands dirty. This is a state where, you know, being involved or connected to firearms or the Second Amendment can alienate you completely from society that you know of. And this is a place where every other home, when you're going down the street, unless they're wearing their politics on their sleeve, which they sometimes do during election season, right? You might see every other sign be a Trump sign or a Harris sign, you know, where I live, which is cool because diversity of thought and opinion is a cool thing. But if you're aligned with that stuff, meaning guns or the Second Amendment, you become one of those people. And I observed that our friends on the other side who don't advocate for or support the Second Amendment, they're not the type of people that generally let bygones be bygones. Not only do they not let bygones be bygones, they want to go out of their way to signal against you, and they want to go out of their way to assassinate your character, and they want to go out of their way to just destroy you. And so for people in New Jersey, it really is a big deal, because if they do put their face and their name out there, they could lose their jobs. They could, lose coaching opportunities in youth sports. They could lose all kinds of opportunities. And you're talking about a segment of society. And again, New Jersey's highly regulated. So I've passed more background checks than, my governor has. I can almost guarantee that, every time that you want to buy just one handgun in the state of New Jersey, you have to apply for that permit for that particular handgun. And you do a background check to get that permit. Then you get that permit given to you. And then you take that permit and you go to the gun store, which now it's all digital, so it's in the ether. So you go to the gun store, you say, I've got a permit in the system, and they pop the permit that says you've got a clean background check. And what do? They run another background check on you. So that's 2 background checks per handgun purchase. So I'm not a super user when it comes to firearms, but I don't have to explain to you that it doesn't take a long time to rack up a lot of these background checks for if you have to get 2 per handgun, 1 per long gun, in addition to 1 for your firearms identification card, which now needs to be renewed every 10 years. And now with permit to carry in the state, that's every 2 years that you get that renewed. So how many background checks do I really need to go through? Meanwhile, somebody that might find out that I'm a Second Amendment supporter, these crazy Karens might start hurling mochachinos at you because you're just a threat. And that's the reality of New Jersey. And even with the permitting system, they make it such that, and I don't have to explain that, permitting systems are generally wrong and unconstitutional. But this is the construct that we have to work with. But as it is, they ask for your employer. Who do you work for? So now they might inquire with your job. And, what if you've got a profession or you're working for somebody that's just a rabid anti-gun person? So now they're going to find out that you're looking to get a firearm or you do own a firearm. That could create severe issues. So New Jersey is a very special state in that way because, you don't really know what you're going to get. And it is a state that's traditionally hostile to the Second Amendment. And when you look at the country as a whole, you have New Jersey, Hawaii, and Maryland that had 0 functional Second Amendment up until Bruin, because all the other states, now New York, which is where New York State Rifle Pistol Club versus Bruin came out of, there's plenty of places in New York that have counties where people could get permits to carry. California is another perfect example. There's plenty of counties, even San Diego County, where the Peruta case was coming up through the courts in San Diego County. Even that sheriff changed their tune because of advocacy from the people from San Diego County gun owners. This is their gun owners radio. San Diego County gun owners, they advocated and worked with and lobbied, and that got the sheriff to change their position on issuing permits. But New Jersey, Hawaii, and Maryland had a statewide complete ban on the carry of firearms. And I feel that culturally, because it was for decades, culturally, it removed the firearm out of everyday life. Whereas if you look at other states, you'd be like, well, it's not a big deal. Oh, that's Mr. Bob from up the road, and he's a gun guy, and sometimes he carries a gun. No big deal. Not in New Jersey. And that's something that, the citizens here were never exposed to. So we really do have an uphill battle culturally and, just in general terms. Even gun owners themselves have to fight against their own biases.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Can I assume that every one of these billion background checks you've gone through, they were all free of charge?
So, yeah, right. Exactly. Every single background check in the state of New Jersey involves a fee. So, I'm paying a fee for the pistol purchaser permit and the background check for that permit, 2 different fees. And then when I go to buy the firearm, because it's a point of contact state, we use New Jersey's very special background check, not the NICS, which is free, air quotes free, taxpayers pay for it, but this is for a fundamental constitutional right. In New Jersey, you have to pay another fee afterwards. So you're paying 3 fees for 1 firearm and then some. If you toss in the fingerprints, then there's a fingerprint fee too, which some of that is offset. Like, oh, we'll give you a break in this area if you're getting your initial fingerprints because you're paying through the nose for that too. And that's, you can only go to one company that does it, and it's an electronic fingerprinting. It's not like you go to your police station. This was a business that was, formerly aligned with a former governor of New Jersey. So interesting how that's a business that's now doing these things, right?
Oh man, what a racket. I mean, this is exactly, and all to exercise a fundamental human right, something that our framers were wise to outline, that is endowed by our creator. And then we amended the Constitution, the Second Amendment, to say, oh, by the way, it's so important that we won't have government monkey with it. We won't allow them to interfere because it is this important. I listened to, oh golly, I'm going to butcher this, David McCullough's address to the National Archives or something like that, National Archives Museum. I don't know how many years ago this has been. I think it was late 90s. Anyway, he talked about just how important it was, the Second Amendment was. It was part of his speech because he illustrated how close we came to losing the Revolutionary War. And I mean right down to the skin of our teeth. So he's like, not only were we battling against tyranny, but it was so important that government not get in the way because of how close we came. Citizens need to be armed. They need to be trained. They have a responsibility to know how to use these things and come to the aid of themselves, their neighbors, their nation. It is absolutely paramount in order to survive and to keep tyranny in check. And here we are with states like you're talking about that wholesale reject that. And they may know, I don't know, some of these people have gone so far from what is true, they don't even understand which end of the planet the sun seems to come up on. I don't know if they would have a common agreement with you and I that it does come up in the east and set in the west. But there are many that if you talk to, they'll eventually tell you, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just don't like it. I'm just never going to be okay with that. Okay, well then maybe I could say, if that's the case, that you depart from truth, or maybe you're mentally ill. I don't know. I have to wonder if I could assert that in some cases and make it stick. Truly, I'm not kidding. I'm serious. I think that I might be able to make that argument.
Well, and the forces that are at play here in states like New Jersey. So even our current governor, he's a carpetbagger from Massachusetts. So it's not like we're dealing with somebody that was coming from an area that respected the Second Amendment anyhow. But still, even in deep blue left of center Massachusetts, again, this was a state that was like 90% shall issue prior to Bruin. But what happened? Post Bruin, that's one of the states that lashed out against the people and started putting in these draconian policies and laws. And that's exactly what happened in just like New York. New York had their Bruin response law was, filed within weeks of the Bruin decision.
Yeah.
And New Jersey, they had theirs signed by December of 2022, right before Christmas. Was a great present from the governor. And this added, a myriad of sensitive locations where you cannot carry. And above all of that, in addition to like restricting where you can canon, you cannot carry a firearm. One of the places was you couldn't carry in your car. So they wanted you to unload your firearm when you got in your car and lock it in a case, and then go to where you're going and then reload the firearm and do this all in your car on the course of your errands. And like, if you want to go and just do your normal stuff, it's like, well, what, I'm going to stop at the warehouse store, then I'm going to go to the home improvement store, and then I'm going to go to the supermarket, and then I'm going to go here. As like, well, it's just like 4 or 5 times that, who's going to pay for the bullet setback that I'm going to get on just loading and unloading the firearm for the ammunition I'm destroying? That alone is an issue. So,
so here we were talking about the complexities associated with getting a permit. And I wanted to mention one of the things that's not complex out there for folks is navigating to iowafc.org, the IFC site, checking out the Trusted Partners tab, seeing all those places that offer you discounts and the value added associated with IFC membership. We need you to do that. We need your membership. That's what makes all this work. I can't have folks like John Petrolino on without the help, and it does require money, whether I like to ask for it or not. It's the truth. We do need that. And we're trying to add lots of value to our membership. We've got trusted partners, lots and lots of retailers, local businesses, national businesses that offer IFC members discounts, and they add up to a lot of scratch. So go to iowafc.org, check out the trusted partners. Don't forget that we have a raffle if you'd like to participate that way. We've got many, many ways beyond just membership for you to help out. Now, I would like to transition real quick here. We thank you again, John Petrolino, for taking some time today. I've got your website up here because I want people to understand about the Pen Patriot. For those of you listening only, that's johnpetrolino.com, JOHNPETROLINO, johnpetrolino.com. And I haven't talked about this yet, but you may know him as the Pen Patriot because that's a moniker. I'm curious, John, was that self-applied or not?
No. So the way that went down was the head of education and training from Gun Owners Action League, which is the Massachusetts state firearms organization. I'm close with those guys up there. I went to school in Massachusetts, and my wife's family's from up there. So Massachusetts is like another home to me. So John Green, who's the head of training and education, he's the one that gave me that nickname, the Pen Patriot. And I saw it. It was on a social media post. And I said, oh, that's like really, really good. And I'm going to take that. So I took it from him, and then I trademarked it. And that's kind of where it came from, and made it as part of my own brand. And what was really cool was, I think it must have been 2 years now. It's been a bit, not this last April. So the April before, it's been a while actually. So it might've been even in 2023. So it was like right after Bruin. So 2023 is when my trademark got approved, and I was able to present John Green with a copy of my trademark papers. I got extra copies so he could have, and he actually made me, sign them, and he's got them hanging up in his office in the Goal office in Massachusetts. So that's where that came from, the Pen Patriot.
Very cool. I don't know the gentleman you're talking about, but I've served on some committees and done some volunteer work with Jim Wallace at Goal. So I'm familiar with the organization, and they're doing some fine work. Nice folks. Coincidentally, the monikers that I get are not self-applied, and they're not ones that I want trademark. So I'm glad that you've got a good one. I can think of worse than the Pen Patriot. So good for you, John. All right. So I'm walking down through the site here. I'm able to see the about. Okay. So your work, your views, your journey, 30 seconds on Petrolino. And some of these things to travel, to be able to write First Amendment virtues, Second Amendment virtues. It sounds like a dream. I'm very, very glad that you're able to do this and that you do these things. So thank you for that. I want people to navigate there and go check it out. Now, I had on Amanda Suffolk not that long ago, and there was a portion of the discussion that we had that surrounded basically the code words or the acronyms tossed out in the Second Amendment community. And she's like, hey,
Sure.
I would like to know what BCG means, and she, of course, she does now, but she didn't when it was being thrown around. And I didn't say it. I probably should have. But when we were thinking about that, the first title of a book I thought of was yours, Decoding Firearms, because the truth of the matter is we should make these things simple because they are. But I think it's human nature to make things complex. So tell us about your book.
Well, first and foremost, I have heard the Amanda Suffolk Bolt Carrier Group story from Amanda in the past. And full disclosure, BCG is not covered in Decoding Firearms. So Decoding Firearms has a very exhaustive glossary of terms in the back, and BCG did not make it. And it was funny when she was telling me about this. But Decoding Firearms is a 101 level book and guide to get people up and going on firearms. So it's a good guide for people who are new or people who want to brush up on firearms and shooting, or even people that want to work with, say, a friend or a family member and get them up to speed. And it kind of covers a fillet of a little bit of everything in the shooting world, with a couple of exceptions. Like, so I do not dive into muzzle loaders much. I had one guy that read the book and he said, I noticed you didn't cover break action revolvers. And I'm like, guy, it's also 2020. So that's when the book came out. I was like, so me not covering break action revolvers is because I'm trying to cover modern stuff that you're going to encounter at your local gun shop that you're probably going to want to purchase for self-defense, right? But Decoding Firearms does cover, handguns, rifles, and shotguns, and all of the safety that revolves around that. And then it goes deeper into some of the topics as well, such as like personal protective equipment, for your eyes and your ears, and ways to safeguard yourself from lead exposure. And I think there's a fair amount of information in there, and it's got some age to it now. The book is just over 5 years old. It's not perfect. I'd like to go back and fix a couple of the errors that made it past the goalie, but it's out there and it's available. You could get that on Amazon, and if you're the type of person that likes things autographed, I mean, you can always email me and I'll pitch that now. Anybody that wants to reach out to me, you can go to the website, johnpetrolino.com, or thepenpatriot.com will also take you to johnpetrolino.com. And you can reach out to me via web form on the website, or you could email me directly, john@thepenpatriot.com. And I'd like to hear from people all across the country, especially with news tips. If there's things going on that you think need to be covered, I like to cover those things too. So anyhow, you can reach me that way. And like I said, the book is available on Amazon. You can buy it that way. If you don't like to support Amazon for whatever reason, you can get it from the Woodland Park Range Gun for Hire. So if you go to Anthony Calandra's website, Gun for Hire, I do believe they sell it online via their web store. But yeah, it's out there and it's available, and it's 266 pages, and it's got over 115 original, illustrations. So it's quite a work.
Fantastic. Thank you. I encourage people to have it. I'm looking down through here now on the site, recent publications, and I'm seeing all these different places that you're published or publishing. I mean, Bearing Arms, Shooting News Weekly, News 2A. Yeah, and I had heard of that before. I'm really glad that you mentioned that earlier, but I haven't spent any time there. I'm going to go do that now. Thank you for mentioning that. MLN, The Truth About Guns. These are the staples in the Second Amendment online community. It looks like you're everywhere. So for people who aren't familiar with John Petrolino, you ought to be. I'm not just yanking your chain because it's fun and you're on the air with me at the moment. I'm being honest. I've read a lot of this stuff before we hopped on. In full disclosure for everybody listening, everybody watching, I remember having somebody that had nothing to do that I was aware of with the Second Amendment come to me and say, "Who's this John Petrolino guy?" And why is he writing about NIL? I'm like, well, hold on a minute. I've read some of his stuff. What's the problem? And the name, image, likeness thing. People talk about NIL. That's an acronym that gets thrown around everywhere, and it deals with collegiate sports, or rather, collegiate athletes. And you wrote something about that clear back in 2021, I think. Bring us up to speed. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Do you want to mention that real quick? Because I think it's a good thing to discuss and to understand, actually.
So the name, image, likeness, it's kind of I guess we could call it I don't know if you want to call it a conflict, but it had to do with, again, ownership of who you are. And in collegiate sports, basically you didn't have full control over your name, image, and likeness for, purposes of, making basically money off of yourself, and saying, well, since this is collegiate, you shouldn't be able to, for lack of a better term, grift off of, what you're doing. Whereas any other sport or any other industry, like if you're somebody that is, doing something, you're a mover and shaker, you should be able to use that name, image, and likeness. No different than if I were to be a paid endorsement to something that maybe you're doing. If you wanted to hire me as a spokesperson, I should be allowed to do that, and my reputation should, if it's worth anything, should be allowed to stand on that. And that's where that name, image, likeness article came about. And it was was an advocate activist here in New Jersey that brought that to my attention, that was even something that was relevant to collegiate sports, and in particular with, people in the shooting industry. And they were going to subvert anything that has to do with firearms. And, I'd have to go back and cover all of the material again, but it was a controversy. And I believe, by the time everything shook out, things got figured out. Okay, obviously this isn't attached to that, because, anytime a firearm is attached to something, the answer in society almost goes negative immediately. And so, well, what about these people who are legitimate athletes, right? So that's where that came about.
Well, if I remember right, and this has been a few years ago, but if I remember right, everybody was hot after NIL. They're like, I play football, I play round ball, I do this, whatever else, and I want a sneaker contract and the whole 9 yards. And oh, by the way, if I was a competitive shooter or a shotgunner or something like that, oh no, you guys can't do that. So,
there you go. Exactly.
Well, wait a minute. Yep. What's the difference? I mean, these people are good at their craft, if you will. What's the difference? Well, we're going to segregate what we think is good and make sure that it's everything but this. And I read that article, and as I said, it's a number of years ago. And the reason I read the article, unfortunately, was not because I had stumbled across it or I had gotten to it yet. I think it was in Bearing Arms that I first saw it, but it was because a friend of mine who is immersed in college football sent it to me because it had circulated through his community. And he's like, I want to know about this guy. What do you know? And I'm like, well, you may be shocked, but I don't know everyone in the Second Amendment realm. Most, but not all. But I'm like, I don't know this guy, but I read some of his stuff. Let me go check it out. So anyway, it's interesting how these paths connect and how they intersect. So I wanted to talk with you this morning about some of those things. I want to chase some rabbits. I want to visit about your book, get people to your site. Okay, so let me ask this. What do you have coming up? What's coming down the pike that we need to know about?
What's coming down the pike? I don't know. I may have an article coming out in a bigger magazine, so that is something that I'm working on finalizing right now. Like I said, I've got work published in Concealed Carry magazine. Again, that's USCCA's magazine. So doing freelance work for them is awesome. Great opportunity, great people to work with over there. So I have 2 more articles that are in development for them. one that should be published in, I believe, January, and then another one, later on in 2026. So there's pieces coming out there. Of course, Bearing Arms, putting out as much work as possible over there. I've been covering recently. I've been covering a very interesting thing that's going on here in New Jersey, and I'm covering it, but also the organization that I represent as a board member, Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, also got involved in the topic. So, I'm trying to stay as removed from it as possible, while I cover it. But it's something that's happening here in New Jersey. And I don't know if you or your listeners and viewers have heard about this, but basically it's a permitting fee nullification effort. So back in June, we had our first municipality, which was Englishtown, New Jersey. And I guess I got to pause and back up a little bit. Part of the Bruin response law that was passed in New Jersey, they changed the price for the permits to carry from, I believe, $50 to $200. So that's a 2-year permit for $200. Now, of that $200, $50 goes to the state and $150 goes to your municipality. So by law, the municipality is supposed to collect this $150 from permit to carry applicants. Well, Englishtown was the first jurisdiction in the state of New Jersey that passed a resolution where they've nullified that and saying, if you apply for your permit to carry and you bring us a receipt showing that you paid your $150, we will refund you your $150 after you've already paid us. So they could say, well, they collected the money. So now this has turned into a very large movement in the state of New Jersey, with now 6 jurisdictions that have decided to say, we will rebate our townspeople that $150, recognizing that this is a giant financial barrier to a constitutional right. It's something that keeps people who are disenfranchised, it keeps them disenfranchised from the right if they can't afford it. And this in particular affects communities who potentially, arguably, need permits to carry more than other communities. So now we have towns that are recognizing that this is an issue and are respecting the Second Amendment. Now, if you think back to, I think it was COVID era, maybe 2020, 2021, there were these big pushes where people were doing Second Amendment sanctuary in Virginia. Well, this is kind of like a supersized sidecar to that. It's not just a resolution saying we're a sanctuary that supports the Second Amendment. It's a resolution that actually supports the Second Amendment in a way that the local municipality is able to affect. And the initiative started, it's a grassroots initiative, and it's now championed by 3 organizations. So New Jersey Firearms Owners Syndicate, njfos.org. They are a boots on the ground organization in New Jersey that is supporting this effort. And their legal director, Joe Laporto, has been doing tremendous work on this fee nullification initiative. So New Jersey Firearms Owners Syndicate, and as well as Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, and the National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action. These 3 organizations have come together in an agreement to say, we are going to champion this cause across New Jersey to get as many citizens their money back, that we shouldn't have to pay $150. Look, I don't think we should have to pay $50, but if it's $50 to the state and that's acceptable, which I don't think that's acceptable, but if that's what we have to deal with, if the local municipality wants to give the $150 back to their citizens, I think that's a wonderful thing, and it steps in the right direction. And many of the jurisdictions are going on the record saying, we clearly recognize this as an unconstitutional burden to the Second Amendment. And surprisingly, there was one jurisdiction that actually brought this up for a vote, a 100% Republican council, a Republican mayor and a Republican manager, council president, and they allowed the measure to go up for a vote, and then they voted it down. And one of the councilmen in Old Tappan, that's where it was, Old Tappan, New Jersey, is the councilman. You compared paying the $150 municipal fee for a permit to carry to being the same as, and quote, the right to have a pet or a dog. And that's literally, and that's on the record. So if you go to my YouTube page, so it's at the Penn Patriot, there's going to be a video there that has the transcript following that you can listen to and watch at the same time. And you can see what these council members had to say with their view, all Republican. Again, this shouldn't be a partisan thing, but these are supposed to be, quote unquote, our friends, friends of the Second Amendment, that all but two, I believe, voted down the measure and said some of the most ignorant stuff that I've ever heard in my life, coming from so-called conservative politicians. So, and this is a remark that Joe Laporto made on Gun for Hire Radio, which if you go look up his episode, Gun for Hire Radio, Joe Laporto, it was recent within the last month or so. He talks about these so-called Republican jurisdictions in New Jersey that just expect to get the gun owner vote because they're quote unquote Republican. And the gun owners are pushing back, like, you need to earn that vote. And this situation in Old Tappan, it's going to be interesting what happens when elections come around and these council members are going to be asking for votes when they voted against their people, they voted against liberty, and they voted against freedom. So that's a story that I covered over at Bearing Arms quite extensively, and I'm covering doing continual coverage on this initiative as it happens. And again, like I said, Citizens Committee is involved in this initiative, so I don't feel bad reporting on it. I just make sure people understand that I am a board member that is covering this as well. But a lot of the like I said, the boots on the ground work that's really getting done, the brunt of it is being done by the director of legal operations, Laporto, and the members of New Jersey Firearms Owners Syndicate. So you should check those guys out too. Absolutely.
We'll do that. Thank you for that. I didn't know. I had heard some grumblings about some of that, and there were some folks in our IFC's executive committee that basically said, hey, permits should be free. And I didn't delve into it too deeply because I was actually really busy at the moment that came up in a chat that we had. But my opinion on it may be somewhat unpopular. I think that we ought to pay for the services that are rendered, but I think it ought to actually be at cost, not as a profit center. So when you and I walk in, or we get online, whatever method it is that we do, we say, hey, we need this permit or this background check or this service, whatever it may be, fine. Then I'll pay you for the time. I'll pay for the employee's time, maybe just a fraction, obviously, for lights and water and sewer, whatever else. But considering how long it takes to process something like that, John, that might be 30 seconds. It might be as much as 2.5 minutes. It's not going to be more than that. So I owe $150? No, I owe you $3.17. That's probably what I owe you. So let's be honest about it. I'm not asking the taxpayer to pay for my processing. I won't do that. But I also am not going to pay you as a profit center. That's stupid.
Well, and I think there's a very large chasm there, and I'm sure you and I would be able to come to some sort of an agreement. One of the things that absolutely is necessary to point out about New Jersey is when you are issued your permit to carry, they email it to you. They don't print it for you. It's not laminated. It's not a plastic card. So New Jersey can take even the $3 that you're saying maybe, and they can insert that wherever you seem fit, because they don't even print or mail the card out. So you're talking about a state that is doing the absolute bare minimum and asking for almost the maximum when it comes to the issuance of this paperwork. So I don't think it would be completely out of the question, completely nullify the fee structure, especially when that's on top of a background check fee, right? So there's still a background check fee, right? So there's a lot of things going on when you're applying for this stuff. And I think we can both agree that $200 is egregious, and maybe a $1.50 or $3 is more aligned. But again, if you look at a poll tax, a poll tax was like a $1.50 poll tax that the Supreme Court or the courts found unconstitutional. So I don't know, but that nullification initiative, this moved to Virginia, and there was a sheriff in Virginia that recently said they're no longer going to accept fees for their concealed carry permits. And he didn't say that this had anything to do with the New Jersey initiative, but this is all happening at the same time. So this fee nullification movement is something that I think we should be bringing across the country. And for those local jurisdictions that have control over the management of that, I will say, yes, do not collect any money. And I know what you're saying about the processing. Forget it. $0. This is a constitutional right. We shouldn't be shaken down. We shouldn't be taxed. Forget it. And states that can do this, I think, should do it. And if there's people, if this is something that you want to bring to your areas, we have resources that we can connect people with and push this across the country, because we want to see this happen in all 50 states.
Well, I shouldn't say it's a novel concept, because it had ought to be common sense. If we're going to pay for something like this, and that's a big if. That's a big if. I still am not big on permits. I think that I would like to see the Gun-Free School Zone Act go away, so there was even less need for a permit. Okay. But it does happen to exist today. So I do understand why people do want a permit. And it admittedly in our area, in our neck of the woods, makes purchasing at an FFL much, much cleaner, much, much quicker. So I understand there are some attributes, but do I want to enrich the people processing this, whether it's a sheriff's office, a PD, or a public safety department? No. This should never been a situation where that their pockets are lined. So anyway, exactly. I appreciate you taking that time today. I appreciate you talking about these things. We got a zip. It's johnpetrolino.com, JOHNPETROLINO, the Pen Patriot. John, thank you so much for coming on today. Any last words, anything that we need to know?
Michael, thank you so much for this opportunity, and everybody that's watching and listening in. I thank you for your time. Again, check me out online. I want to hear from you, John at thepenpatriot.com. Be sure to support all the organizations that are out there, SAF.org, CCRKBA.org. Support the NRA, GOA, FPC, all of them. Every one of these groups are doing phenomenal work. They're all working together, too, for the most part. Everybody is coming to the table, and believe it or not, they're all talking to the White House. And I've got coverage coming out on this in the top of the year, so 2026, and some of this might be discussed in Concealed Carry magazine. So if you don't have a subscription to that magazine, you don't have to be a member of USCCA. You can get just a subscription to the magazine as well. But John at thepenpatriot.com. Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate having you. Everybody stay safe out there.